I like the cutouts of this month's theme. Well, it was hard to choose a reading. I'm reading The Untethered Soul again, which I really love, and I found a reading from that. And then I was looking at this month's Science and Mind magazine and reading the dailies by Dr. Raymond Anderson, who spoke for us. And I found a really good short paragraph in his reading today that I decided to use. So for this, if you would just relax and listen to this paragraph by Dr. Ray, and just take a few deep breaths, and then we'll have a moment of silence after the reading, and Jackson will sing us into the contemplative meditation. So just enjoy yourself and relax. Take a couple of breaths. Allow yourself and your body to be here in the moment. Nothing else to do. Just relax and enjoy the light of spirit, the love of spirit. Evolution is the active, conscious, diligent process of living more fully, loving more fully, and letting ourselves be more fully what we are as divinely magnificent beings, moment by moment, breath by breath.
In this moment, in this place, I remember who I am, letting fear and worry fall away from me. I open my eyes and see there is only love. There is only love. Love that heals, love that sets me free. There is only love.
And in this moment, I know that we are all only love. We are divine, magnificent beings. And that spirit moves through each and every one of us in each moment. I know that today, as we join together on Zoom, that we are even more powerful as a group. And this love grows, this light grows. And the spark that comes from Reverend Angelica's talk today will be just the right words we need to hear to spark our enthusiasm and to help us reach higher into our lives and out into our community. And I know that as we move forward in the spiritual part of our service, it is all in divine right order. And I am so grateful to be here. So it is. All right. And now we have Reverend Angelica. Thank you.
Oh, I thought Jackson was going to unmute himself and sing again. Not? Okay. All right then. Well, thank you both, Jackson and Michele. That was perfect for this morning. So, as Scott mentioned, our theme this month is reaching higher. And doesn't Scott do a great job on those little monthly theme pictures that we use? I just love it. Every time he comes up with something really good. So reaching higher to me is a something that is a lifelong pursuit, constantly going within and reaching higher to have a deeper understanding of ourselves as spiritual beings. So I wanted to first show you our year so far because I think it's interesting how things go. In fact, when the Global Vision people originally created these themes for this year, we talked about being on what Ernest Holmes calls that ever upward emergent evolutionary spiral. And so so far this year, we talked about timeless wisdom and evolutionary vision and how this timeless wisdom takes us into our new vision. And then in February, we talked about the fact that there's only one journey that we're all on, but there's many paths to that one journey. And then in March, we talked about being open to the possibilities of this vision and this journey. And then in April, we talked about stepping into the unknown. And certainly we have been doing that for the almost 2 years. Well, a year and a half, I guess. But nobody knew what it was going to be like for 2020 and 2021. So we've been stepping into the unknown and really learning about how to deal with anger and resentment and all of these things. And that was May, was this holy, holy uprising. We can be part of an uprising, but we've been learning how to do it through love and compassion instead of anger and frustration. And in June, we talked about honoring that soul's call, because all of us have a call, whether we think we do or not. We're all being, as it said in July, pulled by a vision. And that vision, I believe, is that what Jackson sang about, that love, that there's only love. And then, of course, last month, we took a pause for guidance. So we're on this spiral. We're moving upwards continually. And yet, every once in a while, you have to pause and remember who you are, where you are, what you're doing, etc., and reach for that guidance, which leads us into this month, which is reaching even higher. So, one of the things I love about our tradition, our faith tradition, is that you can't stick anywhere. You can get stuck, but life just keeps happening. Life keeps changing, and we keep learning new tools to work with the changes that are happening in our lives. And one of the ways we're really getting clear about is relying on spirit. Absolutely relying on spirit. From our global vision, there's 2 statements that are really good here. We see a world in which every person lives in alignment with his or her highest spiritual principle, emphasizing unity with God and connection with each other. A world in which individually and collectively we are called to a higher state of consciousness and action. And you've heard me say many, many times in the last few years, probably since I've been here, that we're on an ascension process. We're on this spiral, moving upwards, and we do it individually, and yet as we do it individually, we add to the collective. And we're moving into that higher state of consciousness and action. And the second statement I liked is, we envision humanity awakening to its spiritual magnificence and discovering the creative power of thought, a world where every person discovers his or her own personal power and ability to create an individual life that works within a world that works for everyone. So we remember that, yes, we're doing this all for the highest good of the collective, but first we have to start with ourselves. That, when humanity awakens to its spiritual magnificence, that means I have to awaken, you have to awaken, everyone has to awaken as we move up this spiral. So I wanted to play a little bit with one of the holidays that is happening for many people around the world starting tomorrow night, and that is Rosh Hashanah. And I found out this morning that the year 5782 starts tomorrow evening. Now, we say it's 2021. So, and that's been done from Jesus's birth. So it's interesting to me that there's so many more years before that. And when I was reading about Rosh Hashanah, it's both a sacred holiday and it is a happy experience, and yet there's solemnness to it as well. And I found this piece that I'm going to read to you somewhere on the web. According to Jewish tradition, Rosh Hashanah is the day on which God created Adam, the Hebrew word for human. In other words, Rosh Hashanah is the birthday of humanity. It's a celebration of life itself. I've never had heard that before, the birthday of humanity. So, when you think about life, it really is something to celebrate. The life that you're living, the life that's living all around you. I look at my chair next to me, and there's Sandy, one of my kitties, sleeping. She's actually doing a little snore, which is kind of funny. In my living room are two dogs that I'm taking care of. And this morning they were racing all over the house, playing and growling at each other and having a great time. There's so much life there. And I look out my windows and I can see all the redwoods after my backyard is a green belt, and there's some in my backyard and all my plants, and I look out the front yard and the roses are doing their last blooms of the season, and there's just life everywhere. And so let's celebrate as we start reaching higher. Let's celebrate being alive. This article goes on to say, it's no small matter to celebrate the birthday of humanity. Not the sort of thing one can do adequately with cake and ice cream, though you can see in this picture there are sweet things here. The occasion is at once so solemn and so joyous that it has generated a multitude of rituals and, of course, joyous family gatherings. And what I want you to know is that while it's a distinct holiday, it doesn't stand alone. Rosh Hashanah does not stand alone. Rather, it is like a sentinel standing watch over a month of Jewish celebration and reflection, which begins with the 10-day period between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Rosh Hashanah is considered the New Year. Yom Kippur is considered the Day of Atonement. And the 10 days in between these two holidays are called the Days of Awe. And I love that. One, because of the awesome burden people feel both individually and collectively to atone for our misdeeds and make peace, and the other is because of the celebration. So what if we started our journey in reaching higher by letting go of a lot of baggage that we've been holding on to since we were little, perhaps? In a lot of work that I've done over my 35 years, I've realized that it seems like everybody has a core wound. My core wound was being abandoned by my birth mother and given to a family that was interesting, so to speak. You mostly know my history. But the core wound I always thought was abandonment. And I lived with that core wound for a really long time. And because that core wound was always alive in me, your memories are alive in you. They don't just get filed away somewhere. They're always working. That then brought into my life, I can remember, now we got a barking puppy. I can remember when I was first introduced to religious science, and I'd been going to the Glendale Church for a while, and I went on a trip and I came home and one of my cats had died while I was gone. And in my sorrow about that, I realized that that had happened quite a few times, that I had left on a trip, and while I was gone, something had happened to one of my pets. And I was so bereft by this realization that I went to Reverend Elizabeth Clare, who is Dr. Leo Fishbeck's wife, but also his assistant minister, for counseling. And I remember saying to her, anytime I really love anything, they abandon me. So that abandonment issue that from that core wound was still working as a young adult. I was in my 30s actually at the time. So we all have them. We all are carrying around incidences from our experience up until whatever age we are now that we haven't let go of. No. And this idea of allowing ourselves to forgive or be forgiven is a really important idea. For us to forgive. Toto, stop it. This idea of, for me, when I finally allowed myself to forgive my birth mother and then my adopted mother, there was room inside of me for experiencing life in a new way. So it's like for years we've been carrying around an invisible bag, a suitcase full of all kinds of stuff that we really don't want to be carrying around. And now, if we allow ourselves to use this Jewish holiday, this period called the Days of Awe, we can do our spiritual work to let go, to forgive, to be forgiven, and to be clear, because as we're reaching higher, we want to be lighter. I think that this whole idea of the spiral, the spiral, what I realized about it at one point in my teaching experience was that those wounds, like if, let's say you always get a cold just before the holidays, and if you really look back and look back at your life, something probably happened that really affected you during that period of time. So as we're going up, so just think about that for a minute. Think about it, moving up that spiral and how it is an effort when you're carrying along a lot of baggage. I mean, I know from traveling around the world that, every trip I took less and less because I realized I could wash things out in the bathroom sink, and to be carrying around all that luggage or dragging things behind me just wasn't appealing any longer. And that's what I feel about all the stuff we've been holding on to, our grudges, our resentments, our hurts. Let's let them go. The Jewish people have a really interesting one of the rituals. There's many, many rituals, and all over the world, there's different rituals. But one of the rituals I read about that I liked was that they take bread and they throw it into water that symbolizes letting go of those things that they've been holding on to. So I like this whole idea of really celebrating being alive. And you know what happens when you forgive and you let go? The memory of what happened doesn't disappear. It'll still be there. But I know in myself, I no longer have the tenseness in my body that comes up when the memory comes up. It's just part of my story. And I can now see where I became stronger for this whole journey that I've been on for 73 years. Whereas I couldn't see that before. Forgiveness. So in order to celebrate, truly celebrate being alive, let's do this spiritual work. I'll give you, Lori gave you a birthday challenge of cleaning up the highway. You know, it was really symbolic when she said that, because we're all on a highway. We're all on a spiritual path, and cleaning it up is really important. And the interesting thing about the date, too, for that is September 11th, which is when I was living in Baltimore. It was a really sad time for a lot of people, because a lot of people, you know, Baltimore and the areas around it are sort of a bedroom community for Washington, D.C., so, and for New York and, all the stuff that happened. So also what's happening this weekend is Labor Day. Tomorrow is Labor Day. And I wasn't really aware of what that actually meant. And yet, as I read about it, I wanted to find something spiritual in it. So I went to Kahlil Gibran. I love his work. And he says, when you work, you fulfill a part of Earth's dream. To work with love is to weave the cloth with threads drawn from your heart, even as if your beloved were to wear that cloth. It is to build a house with affection, even as if your beloved were to dwell in that house. It is to charge all things you fashion with the breath of your own spirit. Work is love made visible. After I read this earlier this week, I started thinking about, I put it into my mind to really think about work stuff. Now, I love my work. I love the ministry. It is my vocation. And yet sometimes I feel a little bit overwhelmed. And then there's things like housework. I am not a good housekeeper. I try to keep uncluttered, but that's sort of, I get defeated by that as well, because I have so many pieces of paper around, things that I'm working on, etc. And I consider it work. And the work that I consider it is not a fun kind of work. It's not this kind of work that Kahlil Gibran is talking about. It's the kind of work where it's like, oh no, I have to vacuum the living room, or oh no, I gotta wash the windows, or I keep thinking, oh, I should just get a housekeeper. Then it would be easy to love that work. Love the person that's doing that work. But think about this for a minute. Even if you're retired, you're still doing some sort of work. You might be gardening, you might be an artist, you might be a writer, you might be anything. And when you work, you're fulfilling a part of Earth's dream. I love that idea. In other words, he's saying do everything that we do with love. Do everything that we do with love. Labor Day for a lot of people, for a lot of years, means barbecues and parties and drinking beer and being with friends and family, etc. And that's not going to happen so much this year. And so how can we celebrate life still, our work life, without all the outward trappings? I like his statement. He said, it's to charge all things you fashion with a breath of your own spirit. Work is love made visible. When I read that with the breath of your own spirit, suddenly it flashed to my mind the kahunas of Hawaii who state intentions and then use the ha, the breath. They put their hands in front of their mouth and they see their intention in their hands, and then they use the ha, the sacred breath, to fill it with life by breathing into it. Maybe that's what we can do with our visions, with our spiritual life, with our intentions that we set for each other, for ourselves. So I thought of 3 tools for reaching higher. One is mindfulness. This is something that is just coming so clear to me lately about how unmindful I am, how I'm not paying attention as much as I would like to be paying attention. When I did that 3-day meditation retreat last week, I was so distracted so easily that I realized, wow, I think I'm practicing mindfulness, and yet I'm not. And this can get in the way of that. The computer can get away with that. The TV can get in the way of that. So many different things. But mindfulness to me is being where your body is and being fully present to each and every moment. With these 2 little dogs I'm taking care of, I take them for a walk and they're like, oh boy, a walk, and they're just so excited, and they get outside and the first thing they do is start sniffing the air. And then they go run over and part of me gets a little frustrated, because I want to walk and I want to move. And, I'm walking, and then, somebody stops because they've got to check something out right there. And I thought, wow, when I was doing it this morning, I was thinking, why don't I pay attention to all the things that I'm walking by as I'm walking? So I'm walking in the schoolyard, and first I'm noticing all the trash that's around because of the winds and because the kids are now in school. So there's a lot of candy papers. And then I thought, no, wait, be mindful about something pleasant. And I actually picked them up and put them in my extra doggy bag, so that was good. But I started noticing how the trees, even the redwoods, are there's dry parts on them, brown parts, and how the different plants have changed from one season to another, and how they're constantly doing repairs over there, and how things change. And so I tried to walk in total mindfulness by paying attention to everything that was around me, by being right where my body was. Because what happens, you're walking along, if I'm walking without a dog, for instance, I'm walking along and I'm thinking, oh yeah, now I could teach a class on this, and what if I did this, and making all kinds of plans, etc. I'm not being where my body is. If you want to see how little you are where your body is, I have another challenge for you. Tonight when you're brushing your teeth before you go to bed, be mindful of brushing your teeth. See how quickly your mind wants to jump off to something else, whether it's something you have to do the next day or something you did that today or whatever. The mind wants to be busy, 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 busy. And one way to keep it still is to be mindful of what you're doing. The first time I ever tried that, I was brushing my teeth, and I'm practicing being mindful, feeling each tooth, doing the whole thing. My toothbrush has that 2-minute thing, and pretty soon that seemed like it was taking way longer than 2 minutes. The beeper must have gone off, and pretty soon I'm thinking about something else. I was probably mindful for 20 seconds. It takes practice. So my second idea for reaching higher is gratitude. There is so much for us to be grateful for in our lives, regardless of having to stay home, regardless of pandemics, regardless of financial stuff, regardless of whatever's happening in the world, there is a lot to be grateful for right here, right now. And so really get into being grateful for everything. For people, for pets, for plants, for the air. I've been doing, who was it? Ken Gordon? Was that who it was? Dr. Ken, who said that Tony Hagee had given him the assignment of doing the gratitude journal, but everything had to be different. He could never repeat it. That's not easy. And I've been doing that. And I've realized how much there is to be grateful for. My third idea is, I love this Mary Oliver statement. Instructions for living life. Pay attention. Be astonished and tell about it. Pay attention. Be astonished. I mean, when we think about the fact that we're living on a planet that's spinning through the galaxy, and the galaxy is spinning through the universe, and everything, you know, you would walk outside and a little flower can grow up in between a crack in the driveway, and there's just so much to be astonished about. So be mindful, be grateful, and pay attention. Be astonished and tell about it. So let's say this affirmation that Susan wrote. Susan wrote the affirmations for September. Let's say this together. Today I keep my thoughts on God as I reach for a higher, deeper understanding of my own divinity. I am uplifted and inspired. And let's go into treatment. Gratefully, I acknowledge that we are living in an infinite pool of creativity. And that in this pool is both love and law. And this pool is made up of divine energy that is absolutely everywhere. And so as we celebrate the omnipotence, omniscience, and omnipresence of the divine, we recognize that even though that is so large and so infinite, it is also within us. God is in us, acting through us as us. And so I know for all of us that we allow ourselves to let go of our old baggage. We move into an idea of celebrating being alive more than we ever have before. And as we let go of that old baggage, we feel a sense of freedom, a sense of release, like we've been emptied out and more room has been made for the divine. And how wonderful this idea is. The idea that we can practice letting go and letting God be God through us. And I know for each one of us that we're allowing ourselves to be more mindful of absolutely every second that we have. We're allowing ourselves to be grateful for every second that we have. And we're allowing ourselves to pay attention to all the love notes of the divine, whether it be a beautiful flower, a look from a loved one, whether it be breathing in air that doesn't feel or smell like smoke, seeing yellow sunlight instead of orange sunlight, And we allow ourselves to be astonished by nature and all of the beauty that it holds. There is beauty in everything because there is the divine in everything. And the divine is beautiful. And I know that as we allow ourselves to celebrate life even more than we ever have before, we allow ourselves to share those celebrations with each other. Tell someone, Mary Oliver says. And so we do. And as we do, it cements that thing that we're astonished about, that we're grateful for, that we're celebrating, deep within our subjective mind. And we realize, no matter what is happening on the outside, life is good right here, right now, right where our bodies are. And how grateful I am for this spiritual community that keeps me on my toes, that makes me remember the power of this teaching. And I know that each one of us are experiencing this teaching at a higher and higher level all the time. And that even though it's the same teaching that we learned at the beginning, it has even more meaning now. And so with a grateful heart, I release these words into divine law, knowing that each one of us has received something valuable this morning for the next leg of our spiritual adventure called life. We're moving up the spiral. We're reaching higher. And this is a good thing. It's a God thing. And so it is. So next we have a wonderful piece of music by Jeff Smoller. And just a minute, I have to make sure it's here. I want this one. Okay. Share screen. Thank you, Jeff. That was beautiful.